Mr. Renfro. We're going to talk about fractions, decimals, and percents today, how to change them from one to another. And simply put, up here you'll see a fraction, a decimal, and a percentage, all of which are equal to one another. These are all equal to each other. They all look different, and we use them different ways, but they are all equal to one another. Well, how do you change these from one thing to another? Well, let's start with a fraction first. How do we change a fraction to a decimal? So let's take the fraction 1/3. In order to turn a fraction into a decimal, we have to use division. When we divide a fraction, the bottom number always goes outside, and the top number always goes inside. And then we have to put a decimal in since we're making a decimal. If you didn't put the decimal in, then that would change the value of the 1. So we're going to add 3 zeros. We will always just add 3 zeros. Sometimes when we divide, it will come out even before the third zero. And if that's the case, then we just don't have to divide anymore. But for this purpose, we're going to divide 1 divided by 3. See what 1/3 is as a decimal. Well, we use our long division steps. We will multiply, subtract, compare, and bring down. We use these steps for division. So we ask ourselves, we're going to multiply first 3 times some number. See how many times it will go into 1. Well, there is no number that will go into 3, or sorry, to 1, 3 with the number 3, because 3 times 0 is 0, and 3 times 1 is 3. So 3 is too much. It has to be 1 or less. So the only number I can multiply times 3 that will give me 1 or less is 0. And then we multiply 0 times 3, and we put our answer underneath the underlined number, which is 0. Okay? Now, that's step 1 in the division process. Step 2 is to subtract. 1 take away nothing, leave you with 1. Alright? Then you compare. What's left when you subtract always has to be less than our divisor of 3. And 1 is less than 3. Because of that, we can do the last step of division, which is bring down the last number. Okay? Now we did all 4 steps, now we start all over again. Okay? Start all over. When we start all over again, sorry about that. Start all over again. Alright, we start all over again. Now we're looking at 10. How many times can a number be multiplied times 3 to get me 10 or close to 10 as possible? Well, the answer is 3. 3 times 3, put the answer under the 10, is 9. Okay, and you subtract, you got 1 left over. Okay, it's 1 less than you compare, it's 1 less than the divisor 3. It's 1 less than the divisor 3. And it is. So you bring down your next number, which is the 4th step. We start all over. How many times will 3 to 10? The answer is 3. And we'll get the same answer again until stop. It's a repeating decimal, so meaning that the number will keep repeating over and over again as we divide. Now, you were taught in 5th grade that when we divide a number, there's a decimal inside. The decimal goes straight up in your answer. Okay, so what is 1/3 equal to? Well, it's equal to 0.333. We're not going to go past 3 zeros when we divide. Now, if we go past it, yes, but we'll keep getting the same answer. There's two ways to write this. You can write it like I have it, or this means 3 goes on forever. Okay, that's called a repeating decimal. That's why that line is above the 3. 3 is the number that repeats when you divide. So we just changed a fraction to a decimal. Pretty easy, right? Okay, let's try another one. Let's change 1/8 to a decimal. So what do? We have to divide. Okay, let's move that up and let's make a more room. All right, we have to divide. 8 goes outside, 1 goes inside. Then we have to put a decimal, otherwise that's not a 1 anymore. Let's just try it and show you. If I put 3 zeros there, that's 1,000. 1,000, the number on top here? No. So we have to put a decimal in this case, right beside the 1 to make sure that 1 stays 1. Okay? Now, do our 4 steps. Multiply, subtract, compare, bring down. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. We divide. Okay? So again, we're going to multiply. 8 times some number has to give me 1. What is that some number? 18. 0 times 8 is 0. Subtract, step 2. 1 take away nothing is 1. Step 3, compare. What's left to the divisor. What's left always has to be less than the divisor, and it is. It's 1. And since it's 1, we do the last step, which is bring down the next 0. Okay? Let's move our decimal straight up. Right, now, how many 8s are in 10? Or how many times can you multiply 8 to get you close to 10? Well, the answer is 1. Times 8 is 8. Okay? And we subtract, step 2. 2 left over. 2 is smaller than 8. 2 is smaller than the 8. That's comparing. Okay? After we compare and determine that it is, we can bring down our next number, which is again a 0. So how many 8s go into 20? There's 2, which is 16. Step 2 is subtract. 4 left over. 4 is less than 8. So I can bring down my last 0. Then we start all over again with multiplying. How many 8s times 8 can get you close to 40 or 4? The answer is 5. 5 times 8 is 50. There's nothing left over. Stop. And we normally stop at 3 numbers anyway. So what is your decimal equivalent for 1/8? Well, it's 125 thousandths. 125 thousandths. Alright? So let's talk about how do you change a decimal to a percent. But before we do that, let's go over what place value decimals have. The first place after the decimal is called tenths. So that's where the 7 is where it's 7/10. Okay? The second digit after a decimal is called hundredths. So the value of the 5 is 5 hundredths. And then lastly, 3 digits after the decimal is thousandths. So the value of the 6 is 6 thousandths. Now, let's say these numbers here. Okay? The way you say a decimal is however many digits is after it, you're going to say the value of it. Okay, for instance, there's 1 digit after the decimal here. And 1 digit after the decimal here is tenths. So we say this number 7/10 because there's only 1 digit. Okay? There's only 1 digit, so we say tenths. Now, in this example, there's 2 digits. And 2 digits after a decimal is hundredths. Okay, so we will say 75 hundredths is this number. The last number here is 756 thousandths. And it's the reason we say thousandths is there's 3 numbers after the decimal. So 1 number after the decimal, tenths. 2 numbers after the decimal, hundredths. 3 numbers after the decimal, thousandths. So how do we say these again? 7 tenths, 75 hundredths, 756 thousandths. So how do you change a decimal to a percent? You simply use what we call D2P. Everybody sees D2P here. Okay, the D stands for decimal, the 2 stands for 2 places, and the P stands for percent. So we're going to move the decimal 2 places to the right. 1, 2. And notice that the arrow here is pointing to the right. So when we change a decimal to a percent, we move the decimal 2 places to the right. Now, Mr. Renfro, there's no number here. Well, you have to fill in a number here. And that number is going to be a 0 in this case. So this is going to be 70%. When we move that decimal 2 places to the right, decimal is now here, which is 70 whole. Okay? But you don't, when it's a whole number, you don't have to keep the decimal. Alright? So how do we change 75 hundredths to a percent? Again, we use D2P, decimal to percent. And we're going to move the decimal 2 places to the right. I call it bunny hop. That's what we used to call it. So now 75 hundredths as a decimal is equal to 75%. Right? The last one, same thing. In order to change 756 thousandths to a percent, I have to move it 2 places to the right. So that's going to be equal to 75.6%. Okay? Yes, the decimal will be in between those 2 numbers because you can only move it 2 places. Now, my students who have an IEP, they're allowed, some of them are allowed to use a calculator on this. Now, most students are not, but the ones who are allowed to use a calculator, instead of moving that decimal 2 places to the right, you simply put in the decimal in your calculator and multiply by 100, and it will turn it into a percent for you. So let's go ahead and try this one. Okay, decimal to percent. So if I move the decimal 2 places to the right, my percentage will be 8%. Okay? 8%. This one's now here. Let's try another. Alright? Let's try another one. I'll write it. I'll go ahead and write it here. Okay. Let's try 7.23. And I want to change that. Okay. Do the same thing. You have to move the decimal 2 places to the right. Your percentage is going to be a large one, 723%. Okay? 23%. Now, Mr. Renfro, what if I'm given a percent and I want to change it to a decimal? Okay? Well, in this case, I've been given a percent. It's 83%. How do I turn it into a decimal? Well, we just do the opposite. You can see here that the arrow goes the other way now. And we're going to change a percent to a decimal by moving the decimal 2 places to the left. So where is the decimal? Well, this is a whole number, so the decimal's right here, 83%. How do I change that to a decimal? From a percentage, I got to move it back to the left. My decimal will be 83 hundredths. 83 hundredths. Alright? 83 hundredths. So, let's go back and review the previous thing. change a decimal to a percent, or D2P, okay, you have to move the decimal 2 places to the right. But to change a percent to a decimal, you have to, again, it shows you right here, you have to move the percent to a decimal back to the left 2 places. Let's try another. All right, now we got 8.2%. How do we change that to a decimal answer? Move it back 2 places to the left. To do that, there's a number missing. Okay? I'm always filling missing numbers with 0. Okay, so that's going to be decimal 082 or 82 thousandths. 8.2% is equal to 82 thousandths. Okay, let's try this one. 822%. How do I change that to a decimal? Well, again, the decimal's right here. So how do I change it? I have to move it back 2 places to the left. 1, 2. That's going to be 8 and 22 hundredths. 8 and 22 hundredths. Okay, pretty easy, pretty simple. Well, Mr. Impro, how would you make these into fractions? How would you make these percentages or decimals into fractions? Okay, well, let's look at it. First of all, how do you say this decimal? Well, it's 8 hundredths. Well, how do you write 8 hundredths? 8 over 100. It's that simple. It's that simple. This and this are the same thing. Okay? And they sound exactly the same. 8 hundredths, 8 hundredths. They sound exactly the same because they are. They're equal to one another. Okay? Now, it's easy to turn decimals into fractions because how we say the decimal is exactly what we write down as a fraction. Well, what about this next one here, Mr. Murphy? So this says 7 and 23 hundredths. Well, this is going to be what we call a mixed number. 7 and 23 hundredths. So that's how we write this mixed number, because it is a mixed number. It's a whole number and a decimal. So it's a whole number and a fraction. Okay? When we say the decimal as a fraction, it sounds the same. 23 hundredths, 23 hundredths. Just have a 7 in front of it. Okay, so that's 7 23 hundredths and 7 23 hundredths. You say this one the same, you say this one the same. All right, let's try this one. Now, would you turn this into a fraction? Well, how would you say this? Well, you say that 83 hundredths. You write that as a fraction. 83 over 100. 83 hundredths. Okay? Fairly simple, yet a lot of students have trouble with this. Okay? A lot of it has to do with place value. Go back and review that again. You know, you have decimal place value. You have tenths. Okay? Tenths with one number. You have hundredths with 2 numbers. And you have thousandths with 3 numbers. You have to know their value. You have to know that when you name a decimal, what it is, however many places after the decimal is how you say it. So if there was 1 place after the decimal, you would say, for example, there's 1 place after the decimal here, you would say that's 5 tenths. Okay? 2 places after the decimal, 3 hundredths. How would you say this? Okay, this is 5 tenths. This is 5 hundredths. So there's 2 places after the decimal. And how would you say this? That's 5 thousandths. There's 3 places after the decimal. So it's very important that you know your place value to do it this way. Okay. So hopefully, let's go back and review. All right. how do we change a fraction here to a decimal? Well, we don't know the decimal equivalent, and we have to divide. We have to divide the bottom number by the top. Okay. Sorry, top number by the bottom. We have to put this one on the inside and this one on the outside, and we have to divide it at zeros, otherwise the 1 on top will lose its value. So we change a fraction to a decimal by division. Well, how do we change decimals to percentages? Well, we use D2P. D2P. D2P means we move the decimal 2 places to the right to change a decimal to a percent. How do we change percent here, percent to a decimal? Well, we'll do the reverse. We move the decimal back 2 places to the left. Okay? And obviously, when we have a decimal and the fraction will be the same. The decimal and the fraction will be the same or sound exactly the same. You obviously say this 8300ths, and you say this 120. So hopefully you understand how to change a fraction to a decimal to a percent, or a percent to a decimal, and then a decimal to a fraction.